Welcome to the Etsy Conversations podcast, featuring inspiring interviews with Etsy shop owners, hosted by Ijama Elazu.
Hi, and welcome back to the Etsy Conversations podcast. I'm your host, Ijama, and I thank you for joining me for another episode. This week, my guest is Cindy, and I feel like I've known Cindy since the beginning of the podcast. Cindy runs the Etsy shop NeatoKeen, and I'm so happy to finally have her on my podcast. Cindy, welcome, and thank you for being my guest.
Thank you, Ijama. I am thrilled to be here. I feel like it's a long time coming. And
yes.
I'm very, very excited to finally talk to you.
Yes. You were one of the first people that engaged with me when I started doing the podcast. And I thought, whoa, there are people out there and they want to talk to me.
Yes, there are. And it's such a great podcast. I think I've learned more from your podcast than any other resource. So I'm maybe your number one fan.
Oh, thank you so much. And we met actually in person. I think it was, I can't remember what year, 2000 and I don't remember what year it was when Etsy had the Etsy Up conference.
Yes, we did. I recognized you from your picture on the podcast and ran up to you like some crazy person, but yes. It was a delight to meet you in person too.
Yeah, that was exciting for me too. And I really do wish they would have another one. Did you enjoy it? Would you go for another one if they did?
Absolutely. I learned a lot. I loved meeting a lot of other sellers. Yes. It makes you feel a lot less alone. And yes. Because, selling online can be kind of a solitary existence. And they had so many good workshops and I loved it. No, I'd go in a heartbeat. Plus I have 2 kids that live in New York. So I would
extra incentive.
That's right.
Yes, I thought it was really good. And I was excited because I thought it was going to become an annual thing. And I'm really surprised that they've not done another one since.
I am too. I thought it was very, it was well attended. People seemed really enthusiastic. I'm surprised too. I'd go again.
Yeah, I would too.
Maybe they're listening.
I hope they are.
Hope so too.
Sometimes I hope they're not, but I hope they're listening to this one.
That's true.
So, Cindy, how would you describe what you do on Etsy?
Well, I initially started out as a collector, and now I would call myself a curator and a seller.
Okay. And what do you sell?
I sell vintage linens and collectibles from the mid-century that have, I like to call it graphic appeal.
Yeah. Now, I love looking at your store, and every time I see what you post on Instagram, I always think, how does she do it? Like, everything is so unique and so different, and you seem to know, not you seem, but you know about the pieces that you sell, which is something I like. I like when a seller understands what they're selling. And you studied art history. How has that really helped with what you're doing on Etsy now?
Well, I think it made me a very visual person. So I'm very attracted to things with a lot of color and pattern and things that evoke a sense of whimsy and nostalgia. And I actually specialize in vintage tea towels. So it's very niche. And I and just basically have a passion for them. And the variety is seemingly endless. I'm constantly finding, quote unquote, new vintage towels. And I started actually as a collector, not as a seller at all. So it's kind of been an interesting transition from collector to seller. And I have, a very large collection. So I constantly go back and cull through my collection. And then when I started selling it on Etsy in 2011, I actually started going out and looking for things to sell. And often they are duplicates of something that I have in my collection. And so it makes it easy for me, because I'm a collector, to talk about these items, particularly the linens, with great passion, and I want to share that. And I didn't know initially, whether people would respond to them. I thought, well, maybe I'm crazy. I don't, maybe no one else is going to like vintage tea towels. But I mean, they have been really well received by, all different kinds of audiences, people that have surprised me, a lot of illustrators and artists and just other collectors too. So I've sold, them all over the world.
Yes, and you're pushing almost, well, just over 9,000 sales. So for anyone who thinks that any niche is too small, with over 9,000 sales, that kind of proves that there are people who you'll find your market, you'll find your people, or they'll find you somehow.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. I mean, I think there's nobody more surprised than me.
Now, how do you as a collector
hmm
use the vintage tea towels, especially? Do you hang them up as artwork, or do you collect them to just collect and look at from time to time?
Yeah, I think people would be disappointed if they came to my house. I really have them stored away. But I do have a couple of frames that I rotate the tea towels in and out just
Hmm.
based on, what room they're in or what
Yeah.
season. And they frame really nicely. Actually takes a pretty big frame to put them in
Oh,
because they're large. But I don't have a lot of them hanging around. I really am kind of a collector that way.
yeah.
I still am looking for the perfect cabinet to display them in because I'd like to display them stacked. They actually look pretty cool stacked up because there's a lot of colors, really.
Yes.
And I'm still looking for the perfect display cabinet.
Do your customers ever send you pictures of what they do with the ones they buy from you?
Yes, frequently. And I used to be a real purist. I used to not think it was great to use them, but I've really done a 180 on that. And people have made pillows out of them. They've stretched them, over
Oh,
wooden,
canvas.
yes, like a canvas. They've made purses out of them. I've seen coin purses, trying to think what else. Oh, somebody covered a chair with a bunch of them. That was so cool. So I'm fine with
Wow.
that now. I'm happy that they're being used,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know, in whatever way.
Oh wow. I would love to see how people use those. I imagine it's rewarding for you, especially having an appreciation for the fabrics and the designs, and then to see someone turn it into something and useful things too at that, not just
Exactly. Yeah, it is much better than laying around in the drawer. So I'm happy that they're out and being used. And then a lot of people do just collect them too.
yeah. Now, in addition to the tea towels, you also sell other vintage items, is that right?
I do. I sell a lot of other vintage linens like
Okay.
handkerchiefs and fabrics and napkins and placemats and then I sell a lot of vintage collectibles and I tend to stay within the same 50s and 60s and a lot of figurines, a little wooden figures, and then I also sell a lot of vintage Christmas items. I'm very I focus on that in the last quarter of the year and those are big sellers for me.
So do you not sell those year round?
I do. I always have Christmas in my shop year round. In fact, I sell a lot of Christmas all year round, but it's definitely I can see an uptick in the last quarter of the year. People, get into decorating and
Yeah.
they start to think about Christmas more.
Now, when you started to branch out from the tea towels, did you have any reservations that you might be diluting the I guess the brand of your store? People had come to know you for this one thing.
I did. I worried about it quite a bit. In fact, I thought about opening another shop. And I just, I'm an empty nester now. I'm kind of at the time of my life where I'm really trying to keep things super simple.
Mm-hmm.
And I just thought, I'm just going to go ahead and leave it as one shop and give it a go. And if it does feel diluted, then I would, start just offering linens again. But I think it's worked out pretty well. I
Yeah.
try to stay, I guess, within the same aesthetic. When you walk in, quote unquote, walk into my
Mm-hmm.
shop and browse the shelves, I want things to look like they have kind of a cohesion, if that makes sense, kind of a
Yes, it
certain
does.
vibe. So that's when I do sell collectibles, I try to make them, feel like they're from the same era and not random, if that makes sense.
Yes. Oh, that makes perfect sense.
hmm
Now, how did you discover Etsy, and why did you pick Etsy as opposed to, say, somewhere like eBay where vintage items do well as well?
Yes. Well, I purchased a lot when I was collecting. I started collecting in around 2005, and I went, vintage hunting out and about where I live, but I also bought a lot of them on eBay. So
Mm.
I knew about eBay, and I discovered Etsy as a shopper. I'm still a shopper on Etsy, but I bought a lot of gifts and cards and jewelry and kind of unique things. And for a while, Ijama, I had no idea that they sold vintage. And then just
Oh,
one day, I think I discovered a vintage item, and I thought, oh my gosh, I really like this platform. I kind of liked
mm,
the look of it and the feel of it. It kind of had more of a, I guess, a cleaner vibe than eBay does.
yeah.
And I like the fact that it wasn't an auction site. It's more of a fixed price site. And I felt like I could have a nice little shop. So I really dove into, I knew that I was accumulating way too much. And I knew that I had to kind of reverse the process. And I knew I needed to get rid of some things. And so I just opened a shop one day with very little thought. And then I started selling things very quickly.
Okay.
And my first year that I was open, I think it was 2011, I had a really good year. And I thought, well, maybe this is a legitimate business. Maybe I better think about it as a business. I
Yeah.
mean, I knew I had a name. I for some reason, I just pulled that name out of the hat. I just thought NeatoKeen was kind of kitschy and nostalgic.
Yes.
And I've kept it, and just slowly began to figure out, how to become a better seller
Yeah.
and learn all the tricks and of the trade, I guess.
So did you go backwards into forming a business? So you opened the store, you saw it started to do well. Then then did you go backwards into doing the other things like um getting a license and registering it and whatnot?
Yes, that's
Okay.
I did, and I got my own domain, and I don't have my own website, but if you land on that, it will be directed back to the Etsy shop.
Okay.
But yeah, then I started, working on my photography and figuring out, tags and
Yeah.
working on descriptions and
Yeah.
just trying to make everything better with
Yeah.
time. I'm still working on it. It's a
You're like
never-ending project.
you're like the word escapes me, but most sellers, that's how we fall into it. We're like, well, let me just try. And then you find that there's a market, and you're like, oh, okay, well, what do I need to do to make this really legitimate? This is working out better than I thought it would.
Exactly. That's exactly what happened.
Now, do you own your own domain? Do you have any plans to ever branch out and set up an independent e-commerce website, or are you happy with Etsy?
I'm very happy.
Okay.
I don't have any plans to do that. I have it kind of as a backup, if something would ever happen, but I think Etsy's pretty stable now since it's gone
Yeah.
public. But no, I really don't. I think that, I get so much traffic through Etsy.
Yeah.
And, when you have your own website, you have to drive your own traffic there.
Hmm.
And I think that's a lot of work. And plus, I'm not very technically minded.
Right.
I didn't even have a computer course in college or graduate school. And so, having to deal with plugins and all these things, I've definitely looked into it, but I've balked, and I've
Yeah.
just backed away. So no, I think Etsy, that's why I really like about it. It's such an easy platform to navigate, and you know, I just I've had great success, so I don't think I'll ever stray from Etsy.
Okay. Good to know. And especially now with there's been so much change. There have been so many changes on Etsy, and people panic and get skittish
Yes.
about things. And one thing I like is I watch you because I feel like you're a constant and you're steady, and I never feel like I always look and see, okay, what's Cindy doing? Does it look like she's about to jump ship, or is she? And I know you don't know I do this,
that
but
illusion.
oh, sorry, what did you say?
I said, I'm glad I've given you that illusion that
Yes, because you kind of, and I don't know if it's just a me thing, but you always wonder, am I the only one? Because when things start happening, like when Etsy makes changes, in my head I think, just write it out and see how it ends. Just wait. But then if you listen to the quote community, like in the forums, which I try not to go to too much, because
right.
Your head
because
just
they
spins.
panic.
Yes,
Right.
because yes, that's where all the panic and pandemonium is.
Yeah.
And you're like, I need to go, and then I'm like, well, where would I go?
Exactly. I know. Yes, there have been a lot of changes, and I think it's been pretty stable the last couple of years, but there's been, changes with just the site itself, the way that it looks, and, different shipping, the shipping
Yeah.
options have changed. And I do think you're exactly right, and you've done the correct thing. You've just ridden all the changes out. And I always have to think that Etsy as a business has our best interest at heart, because they want the sellers to succeed. That's how they are generating their income.
Their income, right.
So I've always had that in the back of my mind, and just weathered all these changes. And I think it's been all for the best, actually. There's some things I miss. I miss the treasuries. We used to be able to curate those,
Yes.
little collections. I
Yeah.
loved doing that. And that was so much fun and a great way to connect with other people. So
Yeah.
that I do miss. But I think, on the whole, the changes have been for the best.
Now, were you an adopter of some of the more significant changes that they made? There were two paid subscription levels of Etsy that gave certain additional benefits. That was one thing. And then the shipping discounts if you offer free shipping. Did you adopt any of those, or did you just stick with what you were doing before?
I stuck with what I was doing on the first thing. I'm not a paid, I don't pay for the extras.
Mm-hmm.
I kind of figured what I was doing was working, so just stuck with that. But I did acquiesce to their demand, I guess, for free shipping. I only offer free shipping free U.S. shipping on orders $35 or more. And honestly, I think it has helped with multiple purchases. I can see people buying an item less than $35, and then they will tack on something else to make it over $35. I've seen that several times. Yeah, so I think it's been beneficial. I had to go back and, factor in some of the shipping into my prices.
Yeah.
And otherwise you end up losing money, which I have done.
So see, for me, it was reverse. I think you and I think very much similarly, because I did the same thing. I didn't subscribe to any of the paid levels because, like you, I thought, well, what we have now is working, and thankfully they didn't take away anything that was basic that we were already using. It was just to get additional benefits, and I thought, I don't need those. I can do without. Let me just keep going. And then with the free shipping, I for the longest I just did not, and then eventually, like you, I acquiesced. I was like, well, let me try and see. And oh boy, I messed it up so much, because if you use the tool that does it all in one fell swoop, your prices go through the roof.
Exactly.
And then I had people buying at those crazy high prices before I had a chance to correct them, so that I wasn't price gouging people. And I felt horrible, because I thought, no, wait, this is not what you should be paying. This is way more for people who didn't buy up to $35, and they bought only one thing. So they paid the original price plus the shipping baked in, and then shipping on top of that. And I
Oh
thought,
my
oh
gosh.
no, this
Yeah.
is horrendous. And
Right.
so, yeah, it
You were
was,
refunding, right? Yeah.
oh yes.
Yes. Right.
Yes. And
Right.
I even felt bad. I thought, wow, I can't believe you actually pressed the pay button for, for
Right.
that price. I would have been like, this is ridiculous.
Right. No
So,
way.
but yes, it has helped. And, well, actually for me, not so much, at least not yet. I don't see it so much. I still think I'm kind of where I was, and it hasn't hurt.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Now, what does a typical day look like for you when it comes to running your business? How do you split the activities that you need to get done?
Well, I usually start with coffee, and I get on the site and I do administrative things. I frequently have some questions, and so I try to answer those best I can. And then I figure out each day how many things I can list. And, that of course varies depending on what I'm doing during the day. But I like to, I think something that's been very essential for me is listing every single day. I try to
Yeah.
list every day that I can, and I think the frequency of listing helps. I notice when I can't list that my sales definitely go down.
Hmm.
So I try to figure out, like this morning is a perfect example. I think I can list 5 things today, so I photographed those 5, and they're towels, they're tea towels. I photographed those today, and then after this I will work on editing the photos. I often have to edit the backgrounds of my photos. For whatever reason, my house is pretty dark, so I brighten up the backgrounds, and I do shoot on all white backgrounds, which is not exactly, doesn't mean that everybody needs to do that, but for me, it's worked well because I have so much color and pattern in
Yeah.
my shop that I think it's really important for there to be nothing in the background to add to all the chaos and the
Yeah.
busyness. So, and then I, you know, work on the descriptions and the tags. I think it's important to have use all 13 tags for sure. And I try to do a fair amount of research on tags. I'm constantly looking for new terms to sell these linens. I mean, there's only so many ways that you can say vintage tea towel. But I've found out that if I use the word gift in a lot of my listings, that's really helpful. I think a lot of people come to Etsy because they're looking for gifts. And so I'll say gift for mom, gift for friend, gift for man, gift.
Nice.
So, and then I do promote a little bit. I am on Instagram every day, and I try to post once a day on Instagram, and I really enjoy that. It feels almost like a mini blog to me. I like figuring out, what to post every day. That's enjoyable to me, and I take, photos of that. So that's my day. And then, once a week, I try to go out and actually look for items. I'll
Yeah.
do like a little road trip, a mini field trip.
Do you
And
go far?
sometimes I go a couple hours.
Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, I do. Because, it gets stale in your area. So I
Yeah.
will, and then whenever I travel, I really try to go out and find someplace new. That makes it a lot of fun. And then I have a couple of sisters that live in Des Moines, and one of my sisters and I actually have a booth in an antique mall in Des Moines, Iowa.
Mm-hmm.
And so I get out there a fair amount, and Iowa is a great place to go vintage hunting.
Is it?
Yes, it's wonderful. Yeah,
Oh.
I
Any
don't know why.
particular time of the year?
Well, obviously spring and the fall are the best, but
Okay.
there's a lot going on in the summer. There's a lot of vintage fairs and outdoor flea
Yeah.
markets, which are great fun.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, yeah, we have a good time.
Do you use any third party tools to help you? Like you mentioned, sometimes struggling with keywords. I know there are some tools that will help with keyword suggestions. Do you use any of those, or do you just pretty much do some just brainstorming on your own?
I do. You know what? I mean, one of the best tools is
Mhm.
actually the Etsy search bar.
Yeah.
And, I type in things there and find, different combinations of words that I hadn't thought of. I do use Etsy ads, and I have for quite a while, and they've been really successful for me. I set the daily spend at very low. I only spend $1 a day, but I promote most of my items, and I frequently get buyers from ads. And on that, inside that tool, you can look and see what people are typing in to search to find that item. And there's some funny ones. There's some crazy things that people type in, but I have found a lot of good keywords through there. And then another way is just the Google search bar. I've used that. Sometimes I go into Amazon and type in things there, and there'll be drop down suggestions. I know there's things like BuzzSumo is one that people use, and there's something Uber something.
Oh, Uber Suggest. Yes.
Uber Suggest. That's
Yes.
another one. Yeah, so I just kind of keep a notebook with a running list of phrases
Okay.
and kind of try to change them up with each listing.
Okay. So you try to have different ones, different tags for your different products on sale, but that are the same.
Yes,
Okay.
right, exactly. And because you never know what people are typing in, everybody thinks differently. So I think it's really good to have, like you can have decorative towel, kitchen towel, bath towel, linen towel, hand towel, tea towel. I'm just
Yeah.
kind of naming random ones off, but
Right.
so you just never know what somebody's going to type in.
Yeah. And I think part of like what people will type, what people will search for also depends on how they're planning to use it. Like you said, decorative towel. If I was looking for one for decoration, I would search that, as opposed to if I wanted one for kitchen use, where I would put kitchen towel or hand towel.
Exactly,
So yeah,
right.
that makes sense.
Right.
Now, do you sell a lot internationally, or do you sell internationally at all?
I do, and I did from the very beginning. Yeah, I didn't want to exclude anybody, and
Yeah.
I have sold all over the world. And my items are light, so it's very easy to ship internationally, and it's not, that expensive. I mean, obviously it's gone up over the years
Right.
significantly, and I do think it has. My international buyers have dropped off because of the higher U.S. shipping rates. But no, I found it very easy, and then the label you can just print it off within the Etsy system. There's not a bunch of forms to fill out, and just sign it and send it off.
Oh, yes. I have to say that's one of the things I really appreciate about the Etsy shipping when it
Hmm.
comes to international shipping. And it wasn't always like that. Before, you did have to print out forms and then hand sign,
Exactly.
but now you can go in and pre-populate all that stuff once, and then
That
every time you ship internationally, it's all done.
so easy. Yep. I mean, there's really no excuse not to do it. They've made it super easy.
Yeah.
That's a big improvement.
Yes,
Yes.
yes.
Hmm.
Have you ever had to deal with any negative feedback or unhappy customers?
I have had so few Ijama, maybe one or two, and that's it, and it just was clearly my mistake. I one time missed a hole, and
Oh,
but they were, I just refunded their money, and I think I've had, 99.9% five-star feedbacks. The nice thing about selling, I sell things that are very close to mint condition. Um, that's what I really look for when I'm out and about. It's not that I don't sell things that are not in mint condition, but so it makes it when someone receives something in mint condition, it's hard to complain. You know what I
yeah,
mean? They
yes.
just, and if it's not in mint condition, I make sure that I'm very careful to describe every single flaw that I see. And so I want each person to know exactly what they're getting. I don't want there to be any surprises. And I think that's super important when you're selling vintage
Yeah,
is, I think people know, by and large that it is old, it is used, quote unquote.
right.
And so that's what they're expecting. But I want to spell it all out beforehand.
Yeah. And I think the same thing too when it comes to vintage. I think there's a mentality going in that this isn't new in box per se. So
Right.
some things will not be perfect. And I
Right.
think the audience understands that. I
I
mean,
do.
your buying audience, I mean.
Exactly. Yes.
So as far as promoting your shop, you mentioned that you do Etsy ads and you try and post on Instagram once a day. Are those the only two ways that you promote your shop?
Yeah, I also well, when I post on Instagram, it automatically goes to Facebook too.
Oh,
So
okay.
I'm not very good at Facebook for some reason. That I call myself a Facebook failure. I do get on there every once in a while and try to post um, things, and people have found me through Facebook, but primarily Instagram. And then I also and I need to do a better job of this, but I try to post every time I list something. I try to post it on Pinterest too, and I get a fair amount of traffic from Pinterest. I think last time I looked, I think I had like 130,000 views every month. So
Oh,
there's
nice.
there's a lot of traffic that comes from there. I also have a Twitter account. I don't know how much traffic I get from that, but no, otherwise I really don't. I don't advertise anywhere else,
Yeah.
and um, but I've just, particularly through Instagram, and actually through Etsy, I think I've developed a kind of a nice community of people that are like-minded and,
Hmm.
have the same passions that I do. And I think that's been really the nicest benefit of selling on Etsy. Kind of a surprising, um, outcome is that getting to know these people. I mean, obviously through the internet, but you feel a real connection to them over the years. And I have a lot of repeat buyers. I've had people that have been with me since the very beginning,
Oh,
and they're
wow.
extremely loyal, so that's been really nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I know you get a lot of engagement through Instagram. Are you able to trace direct sales as a result of your efforts on Instagram?
Yes, not all the time, but I frequently have people say, "I found you through Instagram. I
Okay.
love this item. I went over to your shop and bought it." I mean, it is an extra step for them. I've never really considered selling on Instagram. I know some people do. I think there are shoppable posts
Yeah.
now.
Mm-hmm.
But not being very tech savvy, I haven't figured that out. And I figure that I think most people know to go back to your profile page, and there is a live, you get, one live link, and
Yes.
that goes straight to my shop. And yeah, I frequently have people tell me, and sometimes I'll post something and it will sell within, a half an hour if I
Mm-hmm.
post it on Instagram.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always the case, but I do think it's, a lot of my audience is on there, and they do come back to my shop that way.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, I ask because again, with Instagram, you only get the one live link, so it's hard. But I know on Instagram there's a lot of engagement, and so it would just make sense that with all that engagement, some people take the extra step to hop back over
Yeah,
and then go to.
and I think it's important just, to talk to those people. If they comment, I always comment back to
Hmm.
them. And then I have a lot of conversations going on in the direct messages, the DMs, they're called. And,
Yeah,
uh, I talk to people every day there.
yeah.
So it's fun.
Now, I know this is a topic for another podcast,
Hmm.
but speaking about selling on Instagram and the shoppable links, which, if anyone doesn't know, Instagram gives you the ability, if you have an e commerce site, to put shoppable product links so that if somebody clicks on that, they're automatically taken to that product and then they can buy it. But it takes some setting up to do. And I like you, I just did not have the wherewithal to try and figure it out. But what I did start to do on I think I have way too many Instagram handles. I have one for the podcast and then one for my Etsy shop.
Yeah, that's good.
I would just tell people, to DM me, and then if they wanted to buy it, because I just felt it would be too hard for them to go to the shop and then look in the shop for the same products that I
Yeah.
was selling. That worried me. So I was concerned that I would lose sales. And so I would say, well, just DM me if you want this. And then I would send them a PayPal invoice. So then
Right.
they can buy it directly from me on Instagram. And that doesn't, what's the word? Doesn't go against Etsy's terms of something. Is it terms of service where you say
Yeah.
you're not going to
Right.
take traffic off Etsy
Right.
to do a
Right.
sale
Exactly.
off the site? Because then
Yeah.
that way I'm like, well, they saw it on Instagram and they DM'd me, so I just invoiced them.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly legitimate. I think a lot of people do that. They also, I've noticed a lot of people have an Instagram account, and then they also have an Instagram shop, where they actually have pictures of all the things that they are selling, and then people just claim them. And I've thought about doing that, but that's just,
It's
doesn't fit
work.
it. It doesn't fit into my keep it super simple plan.
Yes. Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
figure by now, I think that's one of the benefits of being around so long is that people know where to find me. There is
Yes.
another thing you can do to have several. Have you ever heard of Linktree? Where if you,
Yeah.
yeah, you can, on that live link, there actually, if you click on it, then if you configure it through Linktree, you can have several different places where you can send people. And I've seen
Okay.
that.
Yeah, I've seen people who have the link tree. I never thought to look up Linktree, but I've seen that some people have that in their profiles, and then you get to send people to multiple places. But I just
Right,
didn't follow
right. I
through.
only have one place to send them, so I figure,
Yeah,
you
and
know.
and hence the reason I have two, because one for the podcast. So if people want to go to the podcast website, then they can, and
Okay.
then one for my Etsy shop. So if people want to go to my Etsy shop, then they can.
I think that makes complete sense. I really do. Because those are two totally different things.
Different, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
right. I think you're right on there, Ajama. It's good.
What are some of the things you would say that you think you did that helped set you up to be successful on Etsy?
I think listing consistently, we talked about that.
Yes.
That has really helped. And the other thing is just focusing all my effort on customer service.
Mm.
And, whenever I actually on my phone, I have a notification set up when someone asks me a question that will pop up on my phone. And I
Mm.
try, as humanly possible. I know it's not always possible. People have children or they're working and you can't get back to them right away.
Yeah.
But I try to get back to them right away. I figure they're in my shop. They're, a warm lead, you would call it.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'd say 9 times out of 10, they end up buying something from me because I've responded so quickly.
Yeah.
And then the other thing I do is, I do offer a coupon for repeat customers, and that's brought a lot of people back to my shop, and I think they appreciate that. And I also, when someone makes a purchase, they receive, an automated message that you set up through Etsy, and that's fine and dandy. But I like to also send a note to them, a personal note, just acknowledging their purchase, telling that I'm going to be shipping it on what date, and that just I really appreciate their business. And I get a lot of notes back saying thank you so much for letting me know that you actually received my purchase.
Oh,
Um,
nice.
so yeah, I really like to foster a connection with a buyer. So I
Do,
think that's worked well.
do you go in and craft that personal message each time?
Well, they have the new thing is
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
do the
Okay.
snippets. So, but I do add their name and I do
Yes.
add what they purchased and I, try to change the shipping date. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's
Okay.
made it easier. But and sometimes I will, if it's something that I really think is unique that they've purchased, I kind of try to give them a little background on it.
Oh,
And
nice.
yeah, so I try to make each purchase feel like it's something special because I really think it is. I'm, even after 9,000 sales, I'm still super appreciative of everything.
Yeah.
And also, another thing that I like to do is if somebody leaves me a really nice review, I like to thank them for leaving that review. I don't offer. I don't say, please come back to my shop or anything like that. I just simply thank them for leaving such a nice review, and then
Mm.
I appreciate it.
Wow. I feel like I'm not doing enough now.
I don't want to make you feel that way, but they're suggestions.
Yeah, no, I
But
like them. I like them because yes, then people feel valued.
yeah,
I feel valued just thinking about it, and I
it
haven't
is
bought
funny because
anything.
I don't think a lot of people do it because I am a shopper on Etsy. I love the site. I think it's just offers great stuff. And
Yeah.
I often place an order and I'm not really sure if they've received it. And another thing is that I'm a I think my family's called me the neurotic shipper because I ship things, if possible, the same day. I'm at home and then I need to get out. So it's great for me to go
Yeah.
to the post office and if I get an order on the weekend, I try to ship it out on Monday.
Yeah.
So that's been, and people comment on that a lot. That
The
I'm a
fast shipping.
fast shipper.
Yes, I know people love that.
They do.
One of the things I also noticed is that you have a newsletter.
I do not have one yet. I am
Oh,
collecting names for a newsletter, and I am in the process, Ijama, of trying to figure out how to send a newsletter. And I'm working on it. I've got the layout done, and now I just have to send the first one. But I have
oh, nice. So this is new.
This is new, yes. I mean, well, I've been collecting the names for a while. It's actually kind of hard to get people to sign up for a newsletter.
It
That
is.
is one thing on this site that I wish they had a pop-up or something when you visited a site, sign up for a newsletter. Because I guess I understand they don't want to direct people away from Etsy,
Hmm.
but, I would do a newsletter to try to get people to come back to my shop.
Yeah.
So I have several names and I'm working on it.
Okay.
Yes.
Um, so as far as what you want to be communicating to the people who sign up, what do you plan to share? Just new products that are on sale or more? Mhm.
I actually kind of want to go deeper than that. I
Okay.
would like to share some new things, but I would kind of thinking of that maybe thematically, maybe talking about some of the artists behind the tea towels,
Nice.
talking about just the composition of them,
Yeah.
just do more of a deep dive. I'd, I'd love to talk about the vintage Christmas. I think that's a lot of fun. And no, I have a long list of ideas for articles, but I don't want to make it too long and complicated. I want to kind of keep it simple too. But I
Yeah.
do think it's important to communicate with people. And I think if I had done the newsletter, I probably would have even more sales. I mean, there's a lot of things that I could be doing. I don't, like we've talked about, I don't have a website. I don't
Hmm.
sell on Shopify. I don't have a blog. I don't have a YouTube channel. I'm working on the email list. But there are a lot of, if you want, I think it just depends on the individual. It's just how much work do you want to put into it, and
Yeah.
how much time do you have to devote to it. I know, it that varies at different times in your life.
Yeah. Yeah. And all these things take time. And you're right. If you do it right, you do reap some benefits from it. But
Exactly. And I
um
just think the key to all of these things, really anything, is consistency. Just
yes.
you have to know yourself, and like I've never started a blog because I've always, I had 4 kids, and I just knew that I wouldn't be able to, you know, blog as much as I needed to.
Hmm. Yes. Okay. Can you save Cindy someone the trouble of finding out the hard way what not to do on Etsy? What's something a lesson that you learned on Etsy the hard way, and now can you share that with someone else, with just someone listening now, so they don't have to make the same mistake?
Mm, Yes, I think we've touched on it, and that is shipping costs.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think make sure you go out and buy a great scale and know how much everything weighs and do your research on just how much this is going to cost, and either roll it into the cost of the item, or if you're going to charge shipping and you want people to know exactly what they're paying for shipping, which is fine too, just make sure that it's correct, because you can so easily lose money
Mm-hmm.
not getting your shipping costs right.
Yeah. I
So
can attest to having given things away, and I dare say having actually paid people to buy things from me
exactly.
because I messed up the shipping.
Yep, I've had that happen. It happens to all of us, I think. So,
Yes.
That's one warning.
Yep. But when you
Yep.
figure it out, you never make that mistake again.
You know, I know.
Now, we've also talked about things that you really like about selling on the Etsy platform. Are there any features that currently don't exist on Etsy in its current form that you would like to see integrated into the platform?
Well, we talked a little bit about that pop-up for making an email sign up would be really nice, making that easy. The other thing that I would actually love, and maybe this exists in the paid premium plans, but I would like to be able to have a variety of fonts within the actual listing. I would, it'd be super nice to have some bold at least. I feel like it's a little dull. So I think that would make the listings pop a little more.
Yes, actually, I've thought about that before when I want to bullet point
Yes.
some
Oh my gosh.
information. I'm like,
I
oh,
would love that.
yes, yes.
Yeah.
Right now, I just do the hyphen space and then go to
Mm-hmm.
the next line and hyphen space. But yes, some formatting would be nice.
Yes. Some fun formatting.
Yes.
That's what I vote for. So yes, that's it. But otherwise, I think it's just an incredibly easy platform to navigate and get around and figure out. And it's such a low barrier to entry. It's only
Hmm.
20 cents per listing,
Hmm.
and then they charge 5% on the sales. So it's you know plus some transaction fees. But it's I think it's just an easy place to start. It's
Yeah.
a great place to start.
Yes. And compared to selling on other platforms, which I've done, the the listing, the Etsy, the tool for listing your products,
Hmm.
I have to say is infinitely easier than most others. I've done
That's what I've
eBay,
heard.
I've done Amazon, and
Hmm.
Etsy is so clean and simple and straightforward. So that's one thing that they're really doing well.
I agree. I agree. Yep. All the changes that they've made in that area have been for the best.
Yeah.
Hmm.
What advice would you give to someone who's been selling on the platform for a while, like yourself? What would you tell that person right now if, say, they're struggling with just finding or maintaining success on Etsy?
Yes, it's. I see a lot of frustration with, start people, particularly people that are starting out now. I mean, in all honesty, it's a very saturated market now.
Yeah.
There are a lot of items on there. There are, I don't know how many millions of sellers. So it's become a big marketplace. I think that, you definitely have to be patient. Waiting for that first sale can be frustrating.
Yeah.
But I think if you just go through the basics. I mean, definitely, starting with the Etsy handbook is a great resource. I mean, there's so much information in that; it's kind of mind-boggling. But just working on, really clean, good photographs, particularly that first photograph, that is shown on the site needs to be really good. And then, making sure you have all 13 tags and then make sure that your title is good. And your titles need to be exactly what the item is. You don't want to, put a fancy name to it. I mean, it needs to be very clear what that item is.
Yeah.
I see some interesting titles sometimes on things. Um, and I think just, being, like I said, listing consistently and just being persistent and keeping at it. I think, you should have success. I know it's harder in certain categories than others,
Yeah.
but, it requires a lot of patience. I mean, there's a lot of days when I don't have sales and it's just like watching, paint dry.
Yeah.
So I always tell myself to just walk away from the computer and to do something else, whatever that may be.
Yes.
I think that helps.
I like that. I like that your suggestions are all just very simple things because I think that's what works on Etsy is simplicity.
Exactly. Right. Just
Yeah.
the basics. I think it's just working on the basics and also, you know, follow people on Etsy that have had success and look at their listings and look at what are they doing on
Yeah.
each one and try to analyze why. Another simple exercise that I do sometimes is I just look at my past. I think when you look at your sales that you've had, it's a grid of 24 pictures. And I look at that grid and I count up like how many linens have I sold, how many collectibles have I sold. And a lot of times I'll see a pattern. And then that tells me, okay, I need to go out and find more linens or find more collectibles. And that maybe for someone like that sells jewelry, they are not aware that they're selling mostly earrings. So what does that tell you? Make more earrings.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of some simple basic and look at your stats. Where is your traffic coming from? I was really shocked in how little traffic was coming from social media. I thought I was generating tons of traffic from social media, but a lot of mine is people just coming on the site and finding me that way. And what does that tell me? That tells me that I need to have great keywords and great photographs and great, titles.
Yeah.
So those are all very basic things, but that's what's worked.
Yeah. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
You just reminded me of something as you were talking when you mentioned looking at what's selling.
Mm-hmm.
What do you do with your stale inventory that's not moving?
Well, I will often send it to the booth in Des Moines. So that's been a great outlet for me.
Yeah.
I'll renew something several times if I think it's really a great piece. And then 99% of the time it finds a buyer. But occasionally I'll have things that for whatever reason are not selling, and maybe they don't quite fit my aesthetic in my shop, and so I get rid of them that way. And then I give things to the thrift shop too. It's a constant in and out, I guess.
Turnover.
Yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
How long will you hold on to something typically before you decide it's time to just take it out of your store?
I think I renew things maybe 3 times,
Okay.
3 or 4 times, and that's the max.
Okay.
Yeah, just for whatever reason, it's not finding a buyer, and that happens. And
Yeah.
Sometimes something I think is great, nobody else does, and that's okay. I'm fine with that. And sometimes I just keep it for myself too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes my feelings get hurt because I think I know somebody will want this. Why is nobody
Yep,
buying this?
I know. And some things, I'm surprised that sell. Like,
Yeah.
it's interesting, but you have to keep thinking everybody's tastes are different.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, are there any tools or resources for selling on Etsy that you have found to be particularly helpful that you can recommend for others?
Yeah, I have a couple. The one thing about Etsy is that once an item is sold, you can see it, but you can't see what it has sold for.
Yeah.
And so oftentimes when I'm doing research on pricing, because some of the things linens I've got down, but some of the other things that I sell, I'm just really not sure what to price it at. So I've discovered this tool called flippertools.com, and you can actually
Flippertools.com.
Flipper Tools, and you can copy and paste the URL for the item that's been sold, and then there is a spot on there that says Etsy sold items, and you can paste it in there, and it will tell you exactly what it sold for.
What do
So
you paste? The item title or
no,
the
the actual URL, the URL,
the
the
URL?
uh-huh,
Okay.
yep, up
Oh,
at the top. And
interesting.
just, yeah,
Okay.
so that has been great. I subscribe to something called WorthPoint, and that is a collection of collectibles that it's got millions of things in there. And so I do a lot of pricing research on there. I love WorthPoint. And
Is
then another, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, Cindy, is that Worth WORTH point?
Point. Yes,
Okay.
POINT. And it's great for vintage sellers. It's,
Okay.
I've really used it a lot. It's kind of expensive, but I find myself using it almost every day. So I think that's a really good subscription. Enjoy
Okay.
that. Plus, it's a great site to just look and find things for someone like me who loves doing that. And then something I use for Instagram every day that I love it's an app. It's called Square Quick, And, you know, a lot of the tea towels that I photograph are kind of a long format.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they are rectangular, and Instagram loves square format.
Yeah.
So I take these pictures and they rectangular pictures, and it kind of converts them into a really nice square
Oh,
form. And then I
okay.
can make, you can shrink it a little bit, and you can make a white background around it. So it's really kind of a photo editing app
Okay.
called Square Quick.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I love it.
I
Use
am not
oh,
familiar with most of these, so I'm kind of excited to
oh,
check
good.
them out.
And that's it. You know, I'm pretty simple. I just edit my photos on my computer or on my phone. I think
Mhm.
the editing program in there is, you know, suffices. So I don't use anything like any of
Okay.
the Visco or anything like that, which I'm sure are wonderful, but you know.
Yeah. Okay, cool. So I will link to all of these in the notes for this episode, and those are flippertools.com for
Mhm,
finding sold prices on Etsy, WorthPoint, and Square Quick.
mhm. And Square Quick, an app on your phone.
It's a phone app. Okay.
Right.
All right. Great. And I'm guessing it's available for both Android and iOS. Most
I think
most
so.
are.
Yeah,
Yeah.
most are.
Okay. Nice. I didn't ask you beforehand if you had any shout outs. So if you don't, that's okay. But if you
I
do,
do. I
yes.
do. Yes. I've made a lot of friends on Etsy,
Yeah.
and I've actually met some people in real life, so that's been fun. But I have two shout outs. These are two people that I just have a lot of great conversation with, and I consider friends. One is Random Retro. It's Melissa at Random Retro.
Oh,
She's got great vintage, a lot of things similar to what I have. And the other one is Sherry at Pink and Hank, and that's PinkAndHank. And
oh,
she
nice.
is has wonderful vintage, and she's also an artist. She has a website too, and she is a vintage inspired artist, I would say. I just love her things.
Oh, I love that. Okay, I
Two,
will link to both
yeah, two
Melissa and Sherry's Etsy shops.
great. That's great.
Now, Cindy, if anyone wants to connect with you or get in touch with you, what's the best way that they can do that?
I think two ways. The best way is just through my shop, NeatoKeen on Etsy. There's, you know, a contact button. I'm always there. And the other way is through Instagram. You can just send me a direct message. Happy to chat.
Yes, and on Instagram, you're at NeatoKeen too.
Yes.
Yes.
That's it.
All right, perfect. I will link to both of these, both your Etsy shop and um, your Instagram account, so folks can connect with you.
Okay, that's
And
great.
yeah, I love that it's so simple and you're easy to find everywhere.
Yeah.
You have the cohesive branding down.
Right.
I need to pull that together.
No, you do a great job at John.
Thank you. And I'm so glad that we got to have this conversation finally.
I know. I'm thrilled. I know. It's been great talking to you. I've really enjoyed it. It's been an honor to be here because I love this podcast.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much. Thanks for being my guest.
It's my background noise at Jama when I'm working.
Yes. And I thank you for listening to the podcast, and I will be back with another episode next time.